I'm thrilled to introduce educator, historian, and artist Kim Topping. As the founder of Lavender Education, they lead a national program that celebrates LGBTQIA+ history through arts and education. They currently serve as a lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, specializing in gender and sexuality studies. Illustrated by Anshika Khullar, Generation Queer is Kim's debut book and the first collection of biographies about LGBTQIA+ youth activists. In these stories, you will meet 30 young trailblazers from across the full queer spectrum, including the first transgender athlete to compete in Division I sports and a young leader who brought Black transgender representation to people's television screens. This book will be available May 27th. And Kim, thank you so much for joining us. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the whole Lee and Low team for this opportunity. My name is Kim. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a white non-binary person with medium-length brown hair and blue eyes. Today I'm wearing a brown button-up shirt, a gold necklace, and there's a beige wall and door behind me. I'm so grateful and honored to have this opportunity to talk about Generation Queer. As you mentioned, Shaughnessy, this is my debut book, and it's a project that I've been working on for over 5 years with about 50 interviews with youth activists from all around the country. So I'm extremely proud to make this resource available to young people. And the book really highlights the power of youth leadership and puts it at the center of social justice movements, especially leadership that's intersectional and that values collaboration across movements, across generations, and all kinds of organizing strategies. So right now on the screen, there's some illustrations of young people who are featured in the book, and I'll just talk about a few of them, but I also wanted to mention that one of the key themes in the interviews was about this term activist. Originally, the subtitle of the book was 30 Youth Activists. And that changed, and the whole thematic approach of the book kind of changed because many of them were labeled activists without them claiming that title for themselves. They experienced discrimination or harassment, and they had to do something. They had to act. And in most cases, they just felt like, I'm doing what I need to do to advocate for myself and for my community, for others. And that doesn't deserve a title. It's really just about being a good person. So that was a really powerful conversation that I had with so many of the young organizers. So the book became about the way that they organize, and it's organized in 3 different sections. So there's organizers, artists, and educators. So Trinity Neal, you might recognize her in the bottom right. She's the co-author of My Rainbow, which is the book that she wrote with her mom, Deshauna Neal. And it celebrates hair, it celebrates identity, family, love, and it's a beautifully illustrated book. And she also talks openly about her experiences. Gavin Grimm, in the top right, he asked his school to simply use the boys' bathroom. He's a trans boy, now a trans man. And they first said yes. And then there were complaints from local parents, community members, and that led to a school board vote that prevented Gavin from simply using the bathroom. So he took his case all the way to the Supreme Court and eventually won, although it took 6 years. And he worked with the ACLU and many other organizations to fight that case and also to raise awareness about the importance of access to education for trans youth. And then finally, I'll mention one more here. Meg Lee is a trans non-binary Asian American artist. You might recognize their Protect Trans Kids shirts. I love when I see educators wearing these in schools. It's such a positive message. And they create art that's affirming and celebratory of trans people and self-love. So coming to this book, creating this book has been kind of a lifelong process. I came out when I was really young, when I was about 12 years old, and I had some challenging experiences around that. Also some great celebratory experiences with supportive people in my life, like my friend Annie, who's in that photo there. But the biggest gap was that I couldn't find any history of the LGBTQIA+ community, and I couldn't find adults or peers who were LGBTQIA plus. It was very few and far between, so I felt very isolated. And it wasn't until high school when I finally tried to find something. I found one sentence in a textbook about the 1960s that talked about the Stonewall Inn riots of 1969. And then years later, I learned more about that history. And there's a photo here of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. And sometimes what's left out of that story of Stonewall is that Marsha P. Johnson was 23 and Sylvia Rivera was 17. So they were young, they were youth activists, and they were at the forefront of queer and trans liberation. So the book also includes a lot of historical information about the movement, how it came to be, some of the riots that led to the movement for liberation today, as well as educational organizers and artists as organizers. So one other thing I'll share here is that my work has been as a youth worker, an organizer, an educator. And this book, the vision of it is for it to be a resource for youth and for educators. So this picture here on the right is from it's a photo from the March for Queer and Trans Youth Autonomy last spring in DC. Queer Youth Assemble organized protests in every state in the country and in DC, and they were all youth-led and organized. So there's a chapter in the book about Queer Youth Assemble, their organizing strategies and how they brought youth together and shared their voices. And there's also some photos here of professional development workshops, GSA leadership retreats, opportunities for LGBTQ youth leaders to build their skills. So again, there's lots of resources, organizations, skill building in the book that I hope will really benefit educators and students. And then finally, I just want to share about 3 more themes that came up in the interviews. The first one is about possibility models. So this is a term that Laverne Cox uses in place of role model. And it's about showing us that people with similar identities, experiences, that they can thrive and have full lives and achieve their goals. And so I asked all of the youth to talk about who their possibility models are, who their mentors are, and what this concept really means to them, because being in a book like this also places them as a possibility model, and that young people will be kind of looking to them as inspiration. And so Jess talks here about the ways that we can sometimes internalize those negative messages, and she encourages young people to counter that and to really believe in themselves. And with so much anti-LGBTQ legislation and messaging right now and through the whole process of writing this book, I really wanted to counter that with a book that centers optimism and possibility and shining a light on the bright spots. And then the second theme is around celebrating joy, which is very much connected. Every biography in the book ends with joy. It ends with something that brings that young person joy and celebration and self-care. So Mari here is talking about someone who got them an ornament with their chosen name on it. And just that very simple gesture was so meaningful for them. And then Faith here talks about writing and poetry and reading, and that reading books with asexual and aromantic characters has been really meaningful for them and has helped them to connect with their own identity and feel really good about their own identity and experience. And then finally, another major theme of the book is around having a growth mindset and building collective power. So Soma here, who's an Indigenous queer organizer, they talk about a vision for the future that involves both collective power and normalizing change and making mistakes and meeting people where they're at, and building relationships. And I'll just read this quote on the top here as a way of closing. So Soma says, "I feel like it's so important for us all to keep imagining this collective future together. Liberation will only happen if we bring everyone with us, even those people that think of themselves as separate from us." So thank you all so much for listening. I hope you'll read Generation Queer and share it with the young people in your lives. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or at my website. Thank you.